Well, hello there. Welcome into a Monday edition of the show. How I missed you. Although, admit it, you didn't even notice I was gone. Some of you did. And I got to tell you, warmed my heart to know that my absence was noticed on the airwaves, at least during this time slot. Last week, a lot of traveling with Air Force women's basketball, Utah, and then California. So, yeah, but I'm back all week, and I'm excited to chat with you. See what you've been up to. Appreciate you tuning in, whether it's on your radio, online at extrasports1300.com, or on the Extra Sports 1300 app, sponsored by Diversus Health, Mental Health, and Well-Being for All. So much to catch up on in so little time. Nuggets in action tonight as they start this East Coast swing in a place that's not considered the East Coast, Indianapolis. 719-247-1313. You know the deal. Call or text in your thoughts on this Monday. And I want to start with the Denver Nuggets because something happened on Friday. For a while now, this has been the mantra with the Denver Nuggets when it comes to the Los Angeles Lakers. And that has now turned into this.
No one's going to, be scared that the Denver Nuggets are coming to town. So we have to play a lot better than we did tonight.
Friday could be a point of divergence between these two inevitably entangled franchises. Right? For the longest time, the Lakers and the Nuggets have ran into each other at various points in their history. And for the longest time, the Lakers were the team the Nuggets couldn't get past. And you remember the significance of when they finally did. And for a brief moment, in the grand scheme of things, the pendulum swung the other way, and it was the Nuggets that the Lakers could not get past. It was, in many people's mind, the one team that the Lakers could not beat, hence the daddy stuff. So what was Friday? Could be a turning point. And it could be a signal that the pendulum is swinging back the other way. And what it showed me was, one, I thought J.J. Redick, it was a stroke of genius from J.J. Redick. Because while things have been going pretty well with J.J. Redick, he hasn't been a failure. I don't know if you could really say that he's outpaced Darvin Ham to this point. But whenever you are a new coach, you want to leave your imprint on the team. You want to take whatever opportunity you can find to put your stamp on things and say, it's going to be different under me. And that game on Friday was his chance. Right? Now armed with Luka Doncic, he stayed up this is J.J. Redick saying this, for 72 hours, game planning for the Denver Nuggets. He knew how important that game against the Denver Nuggets would be. Which, now that I'm saying it, is Saturday, not Friday. I'm getting my days mixed up, but you know when the game was. So, what better game for J.J. Redick to have the perfect game plan for? And what perfect game to have Luka Doncic have his breakout Laker performance against than the Denver Nuggets. And now you see it. Shannon Sharp doing his, OKC, KFC, whatever that nonsense is that he does. Lakers in 5. He's saying the Lakers not only are going to meet Oklahoma City in the Western Conference Final, completely omitting the Nuggets from the conversation, he's saying that the Lakers are going to win that series. And throughout the national media, you hear the conversation being shifted when just a few days ago, I heard Brian Windhorst basically say the Lakers can't figure out Nikola Jokic. Like, you could get all high on Luka Doncic all you want. They can't figure out Jokic. To now, ESPN has been touting the LA Lakers as now possibly the team to beat across their platforms, not just on First Take. JJ Redick knew exactly. He worked there. You don't think he understands how they operate? That if he were on ESPN's platforms, able to draw something up that would beat Nikola Jokic and the Denver Nuggets, how the conversation would shift? He knew that, and that's why he stayed up for 72 hours trying to figure out how to do it. And on the other side, you have a sign of how much the Nuggets have slipped since they swung that pendulum their way against the Los Angeles Lakers. That was the one constant. Let's be real. Of the things that the Nuggets care about, the teams that the Nuggets care about beating. So no Atlanta, no Washington, no San Antonio. Like, you start to whittle them down, there's a small list of teams that it matters how the Nuggets do against them. The Lakers are on that list, and they were the team that no matter what, the Nuggets, their fans, and Michael Malone could count on they'd beat. And all would be right. No matter what was going on before that, everything would be then right with the world because they beat the Lakers once again. So Saturday was a shock to that entire system. And now doubt creeps in of whether the Nuggets can actually continue to beat the LA Lakers. Just one game. That's all it took. One game. And that doubt creeps in. Now, for the record, I still trust and would take the Denver Nuggets in a 7-game series. I do. I still believe that they would beat the Lakers. Because while JJ Redick had 72 hours, let's give Nikola Jokic 48 to 72 hours. Okay, if their entire game plan, which it was based around what to do against Nikola Jokic, let's allow the best basketball player on planet Earth to figure out how to counter what the Lakers are throwing at him. Right? Remember, there was a playoff game not too long ago where everybody thought that simply putting Rui Hachimura on Nikola Jokic was going to be enough to tip the scales in the Lakers' favor, and that was laughably not the case. So what I'm looking at Saturday about is the future. And where these two teams, where these two franchises are now going. They're going in separate directions. This has nothing to do with the Nuggets. The Mavericks gifted the Lakers Luka Doncic. That was not earned, by the Lakers. It wasn't a credit to LeBron. It wasn't a credit to JJ Redick. It wasn't a credit to Rob Pelinka. They fell ass backwards into one of the best talents that this league has seen in the last 30 years. They didn't earn anything. They didn't figure out anything. Nico Harrison deserves all the credit for the Lakers getting Luka Doncic. Let's make that perfectly clear. But the Lakers have him now. And the Lakers will now be able to build around him moving into the future post LeBron and into the full-on Luka Doncic era. And playing with Luka in Los Angeles is going to be a draw. People are going to want to go there. So the arrow for the Lakers is pointing straight up. And the Nuggets continues to point down from the last 2 years. They continue to get worse. So while I still today feel like the Denver Nuggets would still beat the Los Angeles Lakers in a 7-game series this year, you ask me what team I'm going to buy future stock in? It's the team in LA. Because I have seen the Nuggets depreciate in value year over year since they won a title. And I don't see what the plan is to turn it around, to stop hemorrhaging talent. And what I see is the same thing Nikola Jokic sees. Because I heard everybody talk about this 9-game winning streak for the Denver Nuggets. Here come the Nuggets. And I watched them take advantage, because this is what they did. They took advantage of the NBA's second easiest schedule in the month of February, and people were holding it up like they accomplished something by beating New Orleans twice and beating Charlotte and beating Phoenix without Kevin Durant. How far have the standards gone down in Denver that those can even be remotely viewed as quality wins? Or in any way an indication of the Denver Nuggets returning to the height of their powers? And I've been saying it. And what Nikola Jokic said after that game against the Los Angeles Lakers puts it perfectly. They fooled themselves. The Nuggets and people who follow the Nuggets, people who root for the Nuggets, fooled themselves into thinking that those wins meant anything. And in one game, you saw once again all the problems that we have been discussing throughout the season come back up. They are more reliant on Nikola Jokic than ever. The Los Angeles Lakers basically said, we are going to throw 3, sometimes 4 players right at Nikola Jokic. We are going to crowd him. We are going to foul him. We're going to throw everything at Nikola Jokic, and we are going to force him to pass no matter what. He took 7 shots. Because I've spoken about how Nikola Jokic scoring 40 points is not necessarily the best version of the Denver Nuggets if he only gets a handful of assists. Well, the same is true on the other side. Right? Nikola Jokic can divvy out 20 assists, but if the guy's only taking 7 shots with this team, that's not going to work either. The Lakers said we're throwing everything at Nikola Jokic, and we are going to dare. We are going to dare anybody else on the Denver Nuggets to beat us. And you know what the result was? The Lakers winning in Ball Arena by 23 points. That game shows you how reliant they are on Nikola Jokic. That if he becomes one-dimensional or two-dimensional, because he still had rebounds, if we're talking about the 2 dimensions, scoring and assisting, If he becomes one-dimensional in those two areas, the Nuggets can't win. And that's the bet that J.J. Redick made that he hit on in a massive way this weekend. So they are more reliant on Nikola Jokic than ever. They still can't guard the three-point arc. That has not changed. That has not been any different than it has been throughout the season. They can't guard the three-point line. In a league that we complain is too reliant on three-pointers, the Nuggets don't have the ability to stop the thing that everybody is trying to do now, which is just chuck up threes. All of these issues with the Denver Nuggets that have been there all season long, people wanted to forget. And they had the convenient thing, a 9-game winning streak against the doldrums of the NBA, the dregs of the NBA, all of these teams that are not nearly on the level of the Denver Nuggets. People said, oh, everything's fixed. I never bought into it for a second. But here's the silver lining. This could actually be a really good thing for the Denver Nuggets. It could be a really good thing or it could be the worst thing. It could be the worst thing because it shows that the Nuggets' grip on the NBA is getting looser and looser and looser every day that goes by. And now we still don't know if Denver can beat Minnesota. And you have OKC, and now you have the Luka Lakers. So this could just be a sign that the Nuggets were that 1 year, and we'll remember that year fondly, never to revisit that feeling again. That's the worst case scenario. How they make it the best thing is that they look at themselves with a critical eye. And one of two things happens off of that. Either one, this team raises their game to a level we have not seen them at all season long. And my humble suggestion is they do it by Sunday when they match up against the Boston Celtics. But they raise their game to a level we have not seen. Or they're incapable of that. And they look at this organization with a critical eye, a more critical eye than they ever have. And this half in, half out, we're going to do the development thing, but we're also going to rely on veterans and we're going to invest in our core four and all that. That's done. And this could be an offseason where outside of Nikola Jokic, there are no sacred cows. Michael Malone loved Jamal Murray like a son. Calvin Booth thinks that Michael Porter is perfectly suited to play with Nikola Jokic. With the rise of the Lakers and with how the Denver Nuggets looked, if they can't get by the Lakers in a 7-game series, they have to throw all that out the window. What these players once meant to the team doesn't matter nearly as much anymore. And maybe this team doesn't need a scalpel. Maybe it needs a sledgehammer. Either way, whether they raise their game to a level we haven't seen or whether they take a sledgehammer to this team around Nikola Jokic and build it the right way without any biases towards a player because of something he did 2 or 3 years ago, they're going to be better for it. And maybe they can get back on top. Or this is just a sign that the Nuggets are a byproduct of Adam Silver's NBA. If you are not trending up, you are trending down. And to turn that around, to turn the arrow back up is nearly impossible. It's Minnesota, it's OKC, and now it might be the Lakers. The one team that the Nuggets could always rely on beating. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the Lakers trouncing of the Denver Nuggets over the weekend. Things didn't go much better this weekend for the Avs, and I will get to that. But in the more immediate future, I want to try and separate the bad and the bad with a little bit of good. Didn't get a chance to give my thoughts after the amazing outcome. Well, not maybe we didn't think the outcome was amazing, but the Four Nations, my thoughts on that and the moment that the NHL now finds itself in coming up next. Welcome back, Drive Time Sports. Let's get right to the text line here. Reaction to the Nuggets' loss against the Los Angeles Lakers. Perhaps a bit of a shock to the system, although I'm not picking up those vibes on the text line. Although I think Tom and Brett, I think you guys agree with me more than you think you are. Let me read these texts. First from Tom. Lakers are the fourth best team in the West. It only took one game for the national media to crown them Western Conference champs. Jokic is going to smack them in the playoffs. Nuggets got to trade MPJ or make him play defense. Dude is a liability. While Brett says, I also believe the Nuggets just won 8 or 9 games in a row. Before that, I think they're doing okay. He did mention who was interrupting the Rome show. Pretty good, Brett. I think you both, Tom and Brett, are actually kind of agreeing with me. I don't know if that's your intention or not, but I'm reading your text, and I think we're in agreement here. I'm not the bigger worry if you're a Nuggets fan this season is Oklahoma City. Okay, we'll keep the main thing. It's OKC this year. I agree with you, Tom. I do think that Nikola Jokic with the same amount of time as JJ Redick, if we're talking about a battle of wits now between JJ Redick and Nikola Jokic, I will take Nikola Jokic. I will do that. And I do agree with you, Brett, that we can't completely throw out everything that the Denver Nuggets have done against the Lakers recently because of one game. What I am talking about is moving forward, because the Nuggets, again, let's not forget what they have proclaimed, what their grand plan is. It's to compete for championships, plural, over many years. The San Antonio Spurs is who they are holding themselves to. That's the standard, which is a standard of we're not going to win it every year, but we're going to win it more often than we don't. And we're going to be able to transition from one era to the next era, right? It was the David Robinson, Tim Duncan era, and then it was the Tim Duncan, to the Kawhi Leonard era. Like, that's what they said they can do. And in this time, we have seen Minnesota knock them off. We see Oklahoma City look like an absolute juggernaut. And now we're seeing the Lakers very different. We don't throw out what has happened previously, but you have to also understand that this is a new time for the Los Angeles Lakers. Once they were gifted Luka Doncic, it created a new era, and an era that they can now build out from. So I would still take the Nuggets to win a 7-game series this year. But again, if you're asking me who I'm buying into, and I see one team in the Denver Nuggets that continues to lose talent, unable to replenish it over the last 2 years, and I see a Lakers team that now has the face of their franchise, a face of their franchise that just a year ago carried his team to the NBA Finals, and I say, I think I'm going to buy a little bit more into the Lakers' future than the Nuggets' future right now. That's the bigger picture here. And then, Tom, what you're saying about MPJ, that's kind of my point. And we can quarrel and we can argue over who that person is. And I think if you listen to this show, you know the previously viewed as the previous player that is viewed as a sacred cow in that organization that I would point at. It wouldn't be Porter first, but that mentality is what I'm talking about, because we have these players that either Calvin Booth loves or Michael Malone loves or the fan base loves. And in order for the Denver Nuggets to truly be able to do what they set out to do, which was contend for multiple championships, in this new NBA, some radical changes may have to be made. So it might be Michael Porter. That might be the guy. That's not where I'd look first, but it could be. Could it be Jamal Murray? There's one guy in this organization that's untouchable, or that should be untouchable. Everyone else, the Denver Nuggets should be able to look at them with a critical eye and say, can we get what we truly need moving forward with this player? If they can, great. But they haven't yet proven it. Is it one of these players that you think, no, it's not that guy, it's this guy? Well, maybe not. That's how the Nuggets can use this and where this season might be going and turn it into a positive. Is say, you know what Michael Porter has done for us in the past, what Jamal Murray has done for us in the past, we got to let go of that. And we got to evaluate ourselves in the here and now. And maybe one of those guys don't fit. Or maybe one of those guys is what you can leverage to get what you need. Or the other option is this team takes their game to another level. And it's possible. They might be able to do that. But Nikola Jokic said it after that game. They fooled themselves into thinking that everything was right with them, that they were better than they were, that they were playing at a higher level than they actually were. The Nuggets may need some pretty radical changes in order to stem the tide and to be able to get past Oklahoma City and Minnesota and maybe the Lakers. We don't know yet, but we may find out once this season is over. So I wasn't on air after the USA-Canada game. And I'll say this, look, we were rooting for the United States. So the outcome was not what we hoped it would be. But if you are a hockey fan, I think you can understand that this four nations face-off in its totality, even with the result not going the U.S.'s way as much as we would like it to, it was quite perfect. How many times do we build something up and build it up, and the hype machine grows, and then we actually get to the day and it doesn't live up to it? What we saw on Thursday was every player that the NHL should be trumpeting and putting front and center on every television set in North America. They all showed up. They all had an impact. The Tkachuk brothers were integral to the storyline of that final. Brady scoring, Matthew not being available for Team USA as that game wore on. Cale Makar's reintroduction into the lineup. Nathan McKinnon not only scoring a goal, but being named the MVP of that tournament. Connor McDavid, the best player in the world, scoring that winner, a la Sidney Crosby in Vancouver in 2010. And Canada gets revenge on the U.S. I would have liked to see the U.S. win as much as you would have liked to, but in some way it does make it even more spicy going into Italy next year for the Olympics. And we didn't get that in 2010, right? Sidney Crosby scored that winner, and then that was it. For a long stretch of time, we didn't get the U.S. and their opportunity to avenge. So I thought that the final, even if I would have preferred the U.S. to have beaten Canada, I think for hockey's sake, it was actually quite a great ending because it was a great hockey game. It was high intensity, and all of these stars played a role in how that game went. You even had on a negative side, Austin Matthews, who's still getting asked about like leaving Connor McDavid wide open in the slot to score the game winner. Next year, it's going to be a redemption story for Captain America. Every single one of these stars that the NHL is trying to prop up and say you should watch our sport because of these guys, they all were visible to the largest hockey viewing audience in 3 decades. And the worst thing that could have happened to hockey, with as much as we've been hyping up the Four Nations, is for like Jake Sanderson to be the lone hero of the game. And people go, oh, well, that wasn't very good. And where's this star player that I've been hearing about? So if you can divorce yourself from the desire to want Team USA to win, the entirety of the Four Nations creates an amazing moment that the NHL can now live in. And it reminds me of 1994. And I don't know if you did this. My dad would have a subscription to Sports Illustrated, and he'd read like 2 articles, and then I'd steal the magazine from him, and I would collect them. And in 1994, there was a cover that said why the NHL's hot and the NBA is not. This has the same feeling around it. And at that time, you had the NHL with one of their most storied franchises, one of their most high-profile franchises in the New York Rangers, playing in the Stanley Cup final on the tail end of Mark Messier's famous Game 6 guarantee against the Devils and subsequent hat trick. So you had the Rangers with all this juice. You also had a Canadian team with one of the more talented players in the league, in Pavel Bure. Now, we wouldn't look at, in America, Vancouver being a great matchup with New York, a high-profile matchup. But let's be honest, when we're talking about hockey, it's North America. And if we can have one Canadian team and one high-profile American NHL team, that's a pretty good matchup. And you had scoring was up that year, and it was as entertaining of a product as we had seen in years in the NHL. And it also coincided with an era or a year where the NBA was at its lowest because Michael Jordan was hacking at curveballs in Birmingham. The parallels between 94 and right now, they're there, right? Because it's not that the face of the league is trying out baseball. It's that we're arguing who the face of the NBA is. Right? It can't be Jokic because he's international. He's got to be American. Well, it's Anthony Edwards. Well, that hasn't really happened. What about Shea? Well, he's international. He's playing in Oklahoma City, and we're arguing. The NBA in 1994 didn't have a face because its face was playing baseball. The NBA now doesn't have a face because we can't agree on one. Or we're trying to find any other person we can that's not named LeBron James. And the style of play in 1994 was not aesthetically pleasing. And it's not the same style of play that they have right now, but it's the same complaint that people have about the NBA. I don't like watching. It's not fun to watch it. It's just a bunch of threes. Back then, it was back to the basket, back down defenders, very slow moving, low scoring. So that cover was actually more about the NBA's demise than it was NHL's rise. But the same thing can be said right now, that the NBA is at one of its lowest points in terms of interest, in terms of viewership, in terms of people just enjoying the product that they're seeing. And meanwhile, there's an alternative going on at the same time. It's hockey, and it would be great if we got a high-profile matchup in the Stanley Cup final. But I think that Canada-US serves at the same purpose as the Rangers and Canucks did in 94. And now hockey can just continue that forward momentum and count down to Italy next year. And continue to hype up Austin Matthews and Connor McDavid and Nathan McKinnon and Cale Makar and Brady and Matthew Tkachuk. And they can put them on your television set. And ESPN, the worldwide leader still, can put those players in front of you. It's creating a similar moment to what they had in 94. And coincidentally, you remember about 10 years after 1994, you had another kind of similar point that people were kind of loving on hockey a little bit. And that year is the Rangers and the Kings. So it seems like the NHL has gotten in this like cycle of every 10 years, there's a moment where you go, ooh, the NHL might be able to capitalize on this. It's created another one. And I know if you follow hockey, you know that this in 04 and in 94, the NHL shot themselves in the foot when they had, right, with work stoppages. Whatever the moment was going to turn into, they killed it. This is a new opportunity. You have just one calendar year until the same guys that we saw out on the ice and were so enthralled with less than a week ago are going to all be back on the Olympic stage, an even bigger stage than the Four Nations. It shouldn't be that difficult for the NHL to fully seize this moment. And what's going to be a great passing of the time? How about one of the league's most hallowed records to be under assault? Look at what Ovi did. People thought that there was no way he was going to break Gretzky's record. He broke his leg and missed significant time. And now he's what, 13, 14 goals away? So the NHL can have the afterglow of the Four Nations. They followed by Ovi's chase for Gretzky's record, followed by what they hope will be a big time matchup in the Stanley Cup final that people can get excited about. And then Before you know it, it will be time to really hype up the Olympics. And there's possibly no other sport, maybe soccer, in North America where the people that love the sport are just dying to convert people. Right? You don't see that with the NFL because everybody watches the NFL. You don't see it with baseball because more people have fallen out of love with that sport than have fallen in love with it. But like hockey, there's this desire for people who are hockey fans, hockey people, to convert. And what a great way to try and do that, to get other people who wouldn't normally be inclined to watch hockey, than to show them the Four Nations. And there was like 10 million people who watched that. Many of them aren't hockey fans. So Gary Bettman's got another one of these moments. This one shouldn't be difficult to take advantage of because I don't see a way out of this quagmire for the NBA anytime soon. So it's not like all of a sudden the NBA is going to be lifted up. Maybe if Luka leads the Lakers to a title over the Boston Celtics. That might be a way. But all the inherent issues with the NBA, they're not going away anytime soon. The NHL has 1 year to sustain this momentum, to continue to capture the collective sports fans' imagination until they get to the Olympics. And then that could do a huge number. And then what they do after that is another story. But for this calendar year, this should be the year of hockey. Hockey should dominate this year for any sport that's not named the NFL. Although there are some, cracks with the NFL right now. It's not like we were speaking in glowing terms about the state of the NFL just about a month ago. The biggest conversation was it rigged for the Kansas City Chiefs? This is one of those moments for the NHL and for hockey to capitalize on what we saw in the Four Nations, to continue to market these stars, to continue to tout Alexander Ovechkin trying to chase down Wayne Gretzky, and to hype the crap out of the USA biding their time for the next year until they get another crack at Canada. 719-24-7, 1313. More Drive Time Sports after this. Apparently, hockey has already lost somebody. Brett says he's boycotting both the Winter and Summer Olympics because they got rid of breakdancing. That's not hockey's fault. Can you just watch hockey? That's all. I really. Are they getting rid? Yeah, LA got rid of breakdancing, didn't it? And then put baseball and softball back in. How will history remember the 1 year where breakdancing was an Olympic sport? Saw this from Ian Rappaport. I mean, I know these insiders get their information directly from the source, but I mean, can you at least reword what you were told? Because this reads like a dating profile. Colorado QB and potential top pick Shedeur Sanders plans to focus on his interviews with teams at the NFL Scouting Combine, helping them continue to learn him as a person. He'll allow his 4 years of film to speak loudly, then throw at his pro day with 4 draftable CU wide receivers. First of all, shots fired at the wide receivers who are at the combine. But like, just say he's not going to throw. Just say that. But no, they have to put, he really wants teams to help. He wants to help teams learn about him as a person, like get to know Shedeur Sanders, which is actually not a bad idea. Because I'm telling you, and this tweet really doesn't help, honestly, but his interviews might. There will be teams that will move Shedeur down the board because they think he's a diva. And Shedeur is going to have to dissuade them of that opinion at the combine while being kind of a diva, saying he's not going to throw. Now, he's not alone in that. Isn't Cam Ward not throwing either? So it's not like he's the only one. So that helps a little bit. Helping them continue to learn him as a person. Then he'll throw at his pro day where everything is controlled and there's no way that Shedeur can look bad. I mean, I get it. I understand it. But if all this about Shedeur is, you're going to have to deal with Dion and Shedeur's a little bit too big for his britches when it comes to his stardom and how much of a celebrity he is and everything like that. A tweet worded this way from Ian Rappaport, which I would assume would come straight from the Sanders family. There's no way Ian Rappaport crafted that himself. That was just cut and paste. Like, how do you get more agent speak than that? Helping them continue to learn him as a person. Let's take this negative thing, which is I'm not going to throw at the combine. I'm not going to let you tell me what I'm going to do. I'm going to control everything in an environment I'm more comfortable in Boulder with my guys. But I'm really doing this so you can learn me as a person. Because that's really the connection. Shedeur Sanders is out to make connections with these NFL teams. Just say you're not throwing. Like, come on. So, yeah. Travis Hunter, by the way, still fully participating, I believe, in the combine. Coming up next, Avs with a weekend about as bad as the Nuggets had. That's next here on Extra Sports 1300. Welcome in Drive Time Sports on a Monday. Ryan Kaufman back with you after a week of traversing the Western United States, although well worth the time. Air Force women's basketball with a couple of big wins last week, and they got a chance to really move up the standings in the Mount West over these last few games of the regular season. Speaking of, Madison Smith, shouts to her. She won Player of the Week in the Mount West. She was terrific against Utah State and Fresno State last week. Big reason why Air Force rattled off those 2 wins. Well-deserved honors there for Madison Smith. And you can see her and the rest of the Falcons Wednesday morning, 11 a.m. tip against San Diego State at Clune Arena. Get your tickets, aftickets.com. Got more hoops coming up at the bottom of the hour, that being the Denver Nuggets starting this trip east. They will play Indiana, they will play Detroit, they will play Milwaukee, and on Sunday is going to be the big one when they take on the reigning NBA champions in the Boston Celtics. And they got some things to figure out between now and then. They cannot afford to have Sunday go the same way that Saturday went with the Lakers. But they can build up. They got some time. Speaking of things to work on, the Colorado Avalanche, out of the Four Nations break, left a lot to be desired in their performances. Not only being very offensively challenged, but being very offensively challenged against 2 teams that should not really be giving them that much problem, in the Nashville Predators and the St. Louis Blues. In fact, it wasn't that long ago that the Colorado Avalanche blanked St. Louis 5-0. And yesterday, all they could get is a deflected goal past Jordan Binnington. That was it. Here's Nathan McKinnon, always going to shoot you straight on his assessment of the situation.
Oh, yeah, this is terrible. Anything in particular that you need to do differently? Everything differently.
What do you need to do differently, Nate? Everything. It was terrible. We need to do everything differently. Yeah, not what you want to hear in February. Right? Doesn't feel like there's a ton of time to figure it out or to change everything about what you were doing. Cale Makar said that this team needs to prove that they are worthy of the organization going out and making a deal before the deadline, which is in 10 days. And while I appreciate Cale Makar taking ownership and saying we, because you don't need to add that to the list of issues with the Colorado Avalanche, that you have one player calling out everyone else. But let's just be real about it here. Cale Makar and Nathan McKinnon don't need to include themselves with the rest of the group when it comes to their struggles. They're not the problem. In fact, they're the only things holding this team together. 10 of the 26 goals that they have scored since they traded Mikko Rantanen are not directly attributable to Cale Makar or Nathan McKinnon. Less than half. Those two are a reason for more than half of the team's offense since Mikko Rantanen got traded. Only 3 players on the Colorado Avalanche have a plus minus of 2 or better since Mikko Rantanen got traded. The 10 or 11 games before Mikko got traded, they had 7 players. And now the argument is, well, Ryan, they need time to integrate new players. Well, that is precisely my point that I made after they traded Mikko Rantanen. How could the Avalanche be expected to replace one of their best players, one of the most integral players on the fly in the middle of a season? That was the exact point I made when they traded him, and why I said that the Avalanche winning a Stanley Cup is probably, but definitely not going to happen this year. You don't alter your team in that significant of a way and on the fly put yourselves back together again in order to win the most difficult trophy there is to win in sport. So these struggles for the Colorado Avalanche, I kind of thought they would be there. Kind of thought we would see this. But where I will disagree with Cale Makar additionally is not just one, that he doesn't need to put himself in this conversation. He's being a leader and good on him for doing that. He is far from the issue. Same can be said for Nathan MacKinnon. They have every right to say them instead of we, but they won't because they're stand-up guys, and you would expect nothing less. Here's where I also disagree with Cale Makar. They don't need to prove themselves worthy of anything. Chris MacFarland better make a trade before the deadline. He needs to make a trade before the deadline. And this team is crying out for him to make a trade before the deadline. He voluntarily, well, I shouldn't say voluntarily, given the options available to him, he chose to make the Avalanche worse. But they would be deeper. Not by what I see. I see a team that's actually less deep. I see a team that is heavily reliant on two players. But it's not completely voluntary because Gabriel Landeskog and Valeri Nichushkin can't trade those guys. So who else can he really trade? We are now really seeing it. This organization continuing to hold water and to hold out hope that Gabriel Landeskog trying to do the right thing for their captain is destroying them. Because they can't make any real significant moves. Right? Yes, they have LTIR, but what does that change for the offseason? Right? You have Gabriel Landeskog that has not played since they won a Stanley Cup, and it has been costing them more and more ever since. And Chris MacFarland decided to throw his lot in with Valeri Nichushkin, and that's not working out either. So given the options he had available to him, he had to trade Mikko Rantanen, which I didn't agree with the move, but I understand you can't trade Valeri Nichushkin and you can't trade Gabriel Landeskog. I understand his lack of options, but I don't agree with his decision. Chris MacFarland has to make another move. Because right now, the way the Avs are going, this trade is sinking them. Yeah, Marty Necas looks pretty good playing next to Nathan MacKinnon. Everyone looks good playing next to Nathan MacKinnon. How's Jack Drury doing? That's the additional piece. How's that going? When they made the Mikko Rantanen deal, as much as I disagreed with it, I at least left in the wiggle room of let's see what Chris McFarland does next. There's no way he was going to make this trade and be like, job's done, kick his feet up at his desk and watch the rest of the season play out. There's no way you make a move that seismic and then do nothing after. So I don't know if it's Sidney Crosby. I don't know if it's Brad Marchand. I don't know what it is. But this team doesn't need to prove anything. This team has proven all they've needed to prove. They've proven that they're not better off without Mikko Rantanen. They need more. That's the message that this team has been sending with its play. We're not good enough. You made us worse by trading Mikko Rantanen. Now make us better. Now use the flexibility that you gained from trading Mikko Rantanen and go get somebody that can provide scoring on any other line besides the top line. Because the Avs right now, I mean, forget winning the Central Division. I mean, right now, it is more about the teams behind them than the teams in front of them. And they still have some cushion. But if the grand plan here, the Colorado Avalanche, is to just make the Rantanen deal and then sit back and watch their cushion over the rest of the teams vying for a wild card spot erode away down to next to nothing and eke into the playoffs as the last team in, that's not going to end well. That won't end well, and it will be a really difficult offseason for the Colorado Avalanche. This team is begging Chris McFarland to make another deal. And they tried the Casey Middlestat thing. I'm sorry. Both the Nuggets and the Avalanche have got to stop thinking about what they're going to do 5 years from now. Their window, both of these teams' window is closing before our very eyes, despite having arguably the best player in each of their respective sports. And yet their window is closing faster and faster and faster. How is that possible? Nathan MacKinnon is inching closer to Connor McDavid. The separation between Connor McDavid and Nathan MacKinnon for the best player on planet Earth is not what it was even a year or two ago. Nathan MacKinnon has won 4 Nations face-off MVP. He's won a Stanley Cup. He's won a regular season MVP. He's going to win MVP again this year. All of a sudden, his trophy case is starting to get filled out. If he wins MVP this year, he's only one behind Connor McDavid. So Connor McDavid's still the best player in the world, but that margin is shrinking rapidly. Coincidentally, at the same time that the window of contention for the Colorado Avalanche is shrinking. These two organizations got to stop saying we want to keep our window open and compete for the next 10 years. I just want to see one of these two teams get to another final in the next 5 years. I just want to see him get there. Give me one more. And the way that both of these teams are trending, neither are going to go back anytime soon. Chris McFarland has to make a deal. This is not about the Avalanche proving they're worth the investment. Chris McFarland weakened his hockey team by trading Mikko Rantanen. He chose to weaken it. Now it's time to strengthen it back up. Bring in somebody that can help this team. Because this trade that you made ain't it. The Avalanche are not better for trading Mikko Rantanen. They're worse. And the one thing that they were supposed to be after trading Mikko Rantanen is deeper, and they are less deep. They are more reliant on Nathan McKinnon and Cale Makar every single night. That's not about proving anything. Chris McFarland needs to make a move in the next 10 days. 719-247-1313. Nuggets and Pacers at the bottom of the hour here on Extra Sports 1300. Welcome back. Drive Time Sports. Nuggets and Pacers coming up at the bottom of the hour. The 9 games that the Nuggets rattled off didn't move me. These next few games, they matter. Not so much tonight. I think the storyline for tonight is, will the Nuggets bounce back? Because it's becoming less and less of a thing that you can count on the Denver Nuggets after a bad loss to bounce back in a big way. That used to be a given, right? They don't lose back-to-back games. If they get embarrassed, they come right back and destroy the next team on their schedule. That Nuggets team is gone. Now, do I expect them to beat Indiana? Sure. But it's not a given. In February, they have, I guess we're still in February for another week, the second easiest schedule in the NBA. This is a team with championship aspirations. They should win 9 straight games. So tonight it's about bouncing back, but some of these games coming up and this road trip as a whole, right? It's not easy for any team to go on the road for a handful of games. But they got Milwaukee in the mix. They got Boston on Sunday. This is a far more important week and a far more telling week about the Denver Nuggets than any of those 9 games in a row they won were. But tonight it's about trying to move past the embarrassment of Saturday. And you know what just has kind of stuck out to me, where with the Nuggets and the Avalanche, these teams that won a title and you just think it's going to be this way forever, even though somewhere in your mind you know that that's not the case, right? You know it's not going to last forever. But you've seen where these teams have gone and how their seasons have ended. In some ways, you don't trade a championship year for anything. Right? I think especially if you're the Denver Nuggets, I mean, it's been a little bit more routine in the history of the Avalanche, but given where the Nuggets franchise has been for most of their history, you don't trade 2 years ago for anything. But man, it is not as fun with the weight of championship goals, aspirations on your shoulders. Right? And you see these two organizations make some decisions and just look like they are powerless to stop the decline. And also 9-game winning streaks don't matter. Right? I would say it's much more fun right now to be a Broncos fan than it is an Avs or a Nuggets fan. Which sounds counterintuitive because the Nuggets and the Avs are much closer to winning a championship than the Broncos are. Broncos have a long way to go before they can be taken seriously as a championship contender. There's not even a guarantee that the Broncos are going to be in the playoffs next year. Nuggets especially, but even the Avs to a lesser extent, like it would be quite shocking if they don't at least get into the playoffs. I wouldn't be surprised one bit if the Broncos miss the playoffs next year. Not one bit. But as long as you don't put, and this is why Sean Payton's rhetoric, I understand why he does it, and to this point, it's proven to work. But I think some of his rhetoric around what the Denver Broncos are going to be this year, he might be overextending himself. This might be the point where we look back and say, man, he got a little bit too full of himself and wrote a check that his team couldn't cash. But as long as you don't expect the Denver Broncos to compete for a Super Bowl, I mean, it's fun right now. It's all possibility. What are they going to add? They don't have that much money under the cap, but people make it seem like the Denver Broncos have a blank check. And it's just, I want this guy, I want this guy, I want this guy. That's fun. With the Nuggets and the Avs, it's like, who are we going to lose? Who do we got to lose? Who do we have to give up to make ourselves better moving forward? But this is what you asked for. You don't think the Bulls went through this? You don't think the Spurs have gone through this? The Warriors? The Islanders? The Oilers? I mean, the Nuggets aren't unique. We saw Milwaukee slowly decline after they won a title. We saw the Lakers decline after they won the bubble title. We haven't seen the Warriors sniff an NBA Finals since they won. I mean, it's not that the Nuggets or the Avalanche hold some special place in terms of being incompetent or being unable to sustain a championship window. Like, it's tough. I'm not saying they're doing a worse job of it than anybody else in recent years has. Not necessarily. I mean, some teams you could look at and say have done a little bit better than the Nuggets and the Avs have following their title. But a lot of these are market forces, especially when it comes to the Denver Nuggets. It's Adam Silver's NBA, and it's why Adam Silver is, at least in this regard, actively tanking the NBA. With putting in so many rules that make it incredibly difficult for teams to go back and trying to repeat as champions. We may not want teams to 4-peat and 5-peat and win 6 of 7, but we at least want a team to have a chance of going back. Like, look, it's not what the Avs and the Nuggets are going through right now. They're not special. There are a lot of teams that have gone through this, but it's the world they are, when they live in. When you become a champion, those are the expectations, that you will go back and you will go back, and you need to do everything you can to go back. And if you start to decline and get bounced earlier and earlier in the playoffs, that's unacceptable. And that's the direction that these two teams are trending in. It's not as fun as a team like the Broncos that seem to have infinite upside and potential. But it's the burden of being a champion. Okay, what now? What are you going to do next? For the Nuggets, we'll see. I mean, the answer, it has to be in-house. At least the Avs have the trade deadline coming up. Nuggets don't. If they're going to make something out of this, if they're going to, show that they are a championship team, it's got to be the group that's going to take the floor tonight. Appreciate your patronage on this Monday. Be back tomorrow. I'll be here all week. Coming up right now, Nuggets and Pacers here on Extra Sports 1300.